What's going on, folks? Hope you're having a wonderful night or day. Welcome back to some more Quinfall as always. Today we're going to be doing things a little bit differently because I wanted to talk about the patch notes, specifically the patch notes for the past two updates, and talk about some of their plans in the future because they've actually been giving out a lot of detail that's been going under the radar. Now, the first thing I want to touch on is where we started and where we are currently. Now, it's no secret that the first week or so of early access release, the servers were getting their butts blasted, and that was major problem number one that they solved over the course of about a week of troubleshooting. I covered more of that in my server-related video. The second major problem is after that died down, a lot of hackers, exploiters, etc. started running around and messing up the game. Now, both Update 1 and 2 that we're going to talk about today tie into this, but this has ultimately impacted their ability to focus on other content and bugs and tweaks that are desperately needed. The first update took place on February 6th. It started out by stating that they completely understand that some of us may have been frustrated by the wait. They wanted to emphasize that they are working hard to implement an anti-cheat system that will be effective once it's live. While the process is taking a bit longer than expected due to licensing and discussion with various firms, they've now set the completion date for February 10th. In the meantime, they've gathered feedback from many of us regarding certain adjustments. Specifically, some issues were identified around the drop rate of materials from monsters and production process on the life skill side. To address this, they've made several adjustments to the item drops from monsters. Regarding the server side capacity, because they're still planning to do merges at some point, while some servers are more stable, they're still working to resolve occasional issues on others. Rest assured, they'll continue fixing and improving this as they move forward, and they actually gave more context in this on Discord, stating again that they're not done with improving the servers yet, of course. So just to kind of speed run through this, the first section was gameplay adjustments. They fixed an issue in the build system where players were unable to remove or place objects in certain situations. Two-handed sword, crossbow, life staff, the bow, and dual blades had fixes to some of their skills. They balanced the potion durations and effects, which basically meant that they had nerfed the amount of health or mana that you returned back when you drank the potion. Before this change, it was very easy for 1v1 fights to last for a long time because the potions were very strong, admittedly, and this has helped to balance that out. It can be an annoyance in PvE, but for PvP, it seems like it actually made more sense to do this. For crafting and production, they fixed an issue where livestock and farming materials in the sanctuary area had increased decay requirements. For the tool knife, they fixed the crafting materials for it, and special powers on tools had their visual effects removed so they were not affecting the character. The last two sections were the really big ones. They said that many equipment and materials gained from professions have been removed from the monster drops. From what I've been seeing on Discord and in game, people are very torn on this. Some people really don't like this change, and they feel that it's made grinding on mobs much less viable than before, maybe even not worth doing at all. And then you have others who either don't care about the change or are applauding it. Personally, I don't think that it completely negated grinding mobs. I mean, grinding mobs is still the best way to earn experience still. It's still the best way to earn money by selling the trash items. So I don't think the removal of gear necessarily negated that completely, but I can see their point for like making it less viable. On the other hand, I think one of the mistakes that some MMOs in this genre tend to make is that they discount crafting so much to the point to where it's not even worth doing, and they make it possible to get the best gear through other means like dungeons, farming mobs, etc. I think crafting should be useful through and through. It would just make sense to me, and I personally wouldn't mind if it was where some of the best gear came from. They also stated that they reduced the frequency of essence drops from monsters, and luckily I haven't really noticed this, but it's also because I already had a crap ton of essence to begin with, and I also wasn't paying attention as I've been grinding. The next one was another big one. Pet and food mount requirements were adjusted, which made it so that the pets and the mounts weren't eating a crap ton of food because before that they were just chowing through it like crazy. One thing that it did impact though, at least on the mount side, is there is a daily town board quest that requires you to feed your horse, and if your horse is not eating a lot of food, it can be hard to complete this quest every day with just one horse. However, one tip that you can utilize is either have multiple horses, AFK to starve your horse, or you can actually buy horses from the broker that have low feed, and then feed them and it'll count for your quest. And the last one on this section is for pet drops, and they fixed an issue where fallen pets were only dropping woodcutting and gathering related items, but now other profession related pets can drop as well. The only ones that I'm not seeing being dropped, and I don't think anyone's seen yet, is the weaponsmithing and armor smithing ones, but as for the rest of them, they do seem to be dropping properly, which is really cool. I'm glad that I was able to get my mining pet as well. For bosses and dungeons, this is another big one. On this patch, they had slightly reduced the power and attack speed of dungeon bosses, which was extremely noticeable, and they improved the loot drops from dungeon bosses as well. Now this part, people didn't really notice it because it didn't seem to be a very big increase. The loot was still kind of so-so from the bosses, but the reduced power was definitely noticeable. For example, the Flame Vawraek boss, which was a big challenge for a lot of people, ended up starting to be one of the ones that people would most commonly try to kill. The second patch, which took place on February 9th, tied into the easy anti-cheat that they recently installed. Now before this patch, they actually did enable the easy anti-cheat. It was like either on the 7th or the 8th, but they did enable it. However, a lot of people were getting error messages when they tried to actually run the game. It was saying that easy anti-cheat wasn't installed and people had to use workarounds to get it working again. Well, in this patch that took place on the 9th, they added an automatic installer to resolve anti-cheat installation errors. They fixed an issue preventing character template files and clan banners from loading due to anti-cheat restrictions, and it also states that easy anti-cheat has been activated, but of course it was activated like 1 or 2 days before. Excuse me, sorry. They also stated that for the chat system, this was big, global chat messages were only now available after reaching level 25. The reason this was big was because we were starting to get plagued by gold spammers. I swear it was just one thing after another, and although this change reduced the frequency of them, they were still starting to populate afterwards because gold sellers will always adapt. That's just how it works. But if you see them, block them, report them in-game. You can also take a picture and then post it outside in the Discord channel for in-game reports, and they'll likely get banned as soon as possible. And the second one was message sending cooldown has been increased to 10, which also did cause an impact, but like I said, it wasn't a huge one and for long. The next one was the UI and localization. They stated that various interface and text translation improvements were implemented. They also fixed an issue for the clan system where players could withdraw items from the clan storage despite lacking placement permissions. They made another nerf on the dungeon bosses where they reduced the frequency of the dungeon boss skills. They decreased the HP of all dungeon bosses by 20%, and they significantly adjusted the dungeon boss loot drops to now guarantee at least 3 rewards per drop. Now this was a massive one because now we really started to notice the power drop in the dungeon bosses, at least on the individual difficulty. The party difficulty, at least past the G levels, was still very noticeable in terms of how strong it was. My guild and I were actually doing several over the past couple of days, and the flame boss, even though he's only down to 1 flame wall instead of like 3 or 4 at a time, that flame wall would probably take about 90% of your health if you got hit by it. As far as the party dungeons go, and I have the same advice for the open world, if they can increase the experience rate on the mobs themselves, I think it'll be much more viable and incentivize people to actually do that content. They also reduced the range on certain staff and life staff abilities by 30%, which didn't seem all that noticeable because it still seemed like both of which could hit you from a mile away, but that's just me. And the last section was in the item system. They fixed an issue where power cards ignored filters, and they also added a bulk deletion feature in the inventory, which was my favorite part of the update. It's a fantastic feature. Basically, all you have to do is click on the trash icon now, and then you can start right-clicking the items that you would like to have destroyed, and then tap delete. Super easy. Very much loving that feature addition. Thank you so much, Quinfall team. Now, as some of you probably heard me in live streams, I do have a lot more feedback to give on different changes that they've made and some that are hopefully yet to come. I do plan to do another video of suggestions to the developers, but I have a very long list of stuff that I want to suggest, so it's going to take me a while, probably a couple of days to get that going. Actually, folks, it looks like we're going to be doing a little bit of a pivot because they just posted the 2025 roadmap and a message regarding the game. Firstly, they state that before we dive into the 2025 roadmap, we want to take a moment to address some questions to clarify a few things about Quinfall and their journey as developers. Lately, there's been a lot of misinformation and misconceptions about the game. To ensure transparency, they've accepted interview requests from a few content creators so more people can hear from them directly. As they say in Turkish, listen to the wolf, but also to the lamb. It's important to hear both sides before making a judgment. Vawraek Technology started in early 2020 as a small indie studio. Back then, they worked on a different MMORPG project, Kyra Online, which we've talked about before, which was always a small-scale game. There's been a lot of confusion about its closure, so let's be clear, Kyra Online didn't shut down while it still had a big player base. In its last 4 months, and this I didn't even know, the player count dropped to around 50 to 100 active users, and the server costs outweighed what the game could sustain. They made the difficult decision to close it down, informing players 2 months in advance so they had time to say their goodbyes. This I wasn't even aware of because I had heard that it had closed even before the beta period was over, but about a year ago when I was covering Quinfall more in depth, I did go back and look at the Kyra Online socials, and this does seem to track what they're saying. But they say Quinfall, on the other hand, is a completely different project, built from scratch by a new team. Even though they are still a small core group of 10 people, they have poured everything into creating this world. When they first shared Quinfall, they never expected such a massive reaction, and as excitement grew, their small indie dream turned into something much bigger. That said, they know there's been misunderstandings along the way, language barriers, and being a Turkish studio sometimes made it harder for them to communicate their vision properly. But at its heart, Quinfall is a passion project built by MMORPG players for MMORPG players. One of the most common questions they get is about Kickstarter. They chose not to go that route because over the years they've seen too many projects fail to deliver on their promises. I know about that all too well. Instead, they believe in a more transparent approach, gaining support through early access while continuing development with the community's feedback. Their development roadmap is filled with ambitious goals, and they're excited to bring the world to life. And our feedback, ideas, and support mean everything to them. So overall, a really solid post. I'm expecting some of the other content creators to send in questions related to potentially some of the other rumors that were surrounding Kyra Online in its past, but I'm also being given the opportunity to send in questions to be answered, and I don't really want to waste any of them by talking about what happened in the past. I'm going to be looking over all of my notes after reading through this roadmap and come up with the best ones I can find, but if you guys have any suggestions, also please leave them below. Now getting to the 2025 roadmap, the first thing is server and technical systems. They plan to execute the server merging and server capacity increases, which of course we already knew about. They plan to incorporate a party finder, which I did not know about. That's going to be extremely interesting. Hopefully, and I will have a separate video about this because I've started a series for it, they'll also incorporate joining parties automatically when you step into arena fights. Would be really nice. They're also going to be incorporating a raid party system, which is a big one for me. Thank you so freaking much for that. I'm excited. But of course, it's no secret that currently the dungeons they already have need to be tweaked, hopefully before that happens. The worker node system, sorry, I had to come in the game for a second, which we already knew was going to be a thing because the window was already there, or the menu rather, so that's going to be awesome to see. Also, you're already capable of getting items in-game that allow you to saturate your workers. So that's going to be super cool to see, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to love that. The second section was for combat and skill improvements, and the first section was for skill systems and combat revamps. They actually expanded on this detail more in Discord, and I was actually planning to do that video before this one, but I'm just combining them into one. On Discord, yesterday Greece had said that they have plans for combat improvements and some fixes in mass battles. They want to add balance to weapons in this regard, starting from the combat system, and then focus on mass battles afterward. They also said that boss mechanics, monster improvements, all of that is in the future plans. And in another post, he even mentioned the Necromancer weapon. If you're not aware, back in Closed Beta 2, the Life Staff actually had the ability to summon a skeletal warrior, but it got taken out between then and now, and apparently the reason for that was because they were planning to introduce it into another weapon, so we should be getting the ability to play as Necromancers in the future. The second section talked about a mount system revamp, which they did actually expand more on in Discord. He said that not just more horse types and breeds, they also want to organize a completely major update to the horse system. They realize that horses are very important in a 2016 kilometer square map, and they're planning major updates and fixes to the mount system in the next roadmap, which we're reading right now. I'm also actually planning to ask about different types of mounts, like if they have plans for bears, etc. And right now you do not have the ability to breed legendary horses with each other, but I'm assuming that in the future you'll be able to, and when you can, I think it'll go up to red grade because there's already an epic section in the automatic collecting filter tooltip. The next section talks about crafting revamps and animal husbandry and farming, which they also of course expanded on in Discord too. He said yesterday that they have plans to improve most things in life skills because he said yes, as someone had said, some of them, as they said, was very shallow at the moment, but they're planning improvements to detail them and make them more comfortable. It was also stated that the comfort system and future update for houses such as inviting friends will be activated in a future update as well. Griffin also separately talked about how the altar system isn't really working as intended right now. As people know, it's very easy to break into bases, but that's also something they're already planning to tweak in the future. The third section, which we already knew some of about, is role-playing and social systems. The tavern system we had already known about, and it's going to come with hopefully the card game system that they had teased in a previous teaser. They also said the workforce system is planned, and I think what they're referring to is the laborer profession, the foreman profession, but this is going to allow players to sign up as laborers and sign contract with others to do things like resource gathering for them, field maintenance, and then assist with running their player shops, which will be a thing in the future. There might also be more that we can do in this system. The next thing was guitar playing, which I was actually surprised to see. It makes me wonder if they're also going to introduce other instruments in the future. Dart throwing, which I didn't expect, but will be a welcome thing. I'm assuming that's going to be in the tavern. I'll definitely be trying that. And then they say etc., so we'll find out more later. Marriage system, which I already knew about actually because it was included in the bottom of the CBT2 roadmap, but it looks like that'll be a thing in 2025. And on the CBT2 roadmap, it also said that if you do marry somebody, it'll come with bonuses and benefits. There's also, if you look on the map, there's already an NPC for the marriage system. Let me take a look at it really quick here. It's the marriage officer, so when that's fully implemented, we'll be able to see them as an icon on the map. They also mention Zeppelin tours and balloon rentals through the transportation system, so that gives me a confirmation that we'll be able to actually fly these balloons alongside using them as griffins like we would in World of Warcraft. There's already an NPC marker for this one too inside of the game. If you look at the map, there is a transport attendant with an airship icon, so it looks like that's what it'll look like when they're implemented into the game. The reason that this serves as a soft confirmation that we may be able to fly this is it says transportation system in parentheses, which is actually the profession that's going to allow us as players to sign contracts with other people and transport them for a fee. So you'll basically be a fantasy Uber. There's also going to be a reliability system, so if somebody doesn't do the job properly, their score will go down. I believe the labor system has this as well. The fourth section, which is interesting, is for companion and support systems. There's going to be a seeker, a small queue companion that can assist players with buffs and automation. Now it sounds like this pet is going to be capable of helping you with your farmland and stuff like that. I'm actually curious what this community's reception to this is going to be, especially because we'll have the labor system as well, because I randomly came across a post a few days ago about Arcage on Reddit, and I saw some players talk about a pet that was in that game that assisted with farmland and stuff like that, but they considered it to be pay to win. And I'm actually wondering in this game if this will be a cash shop only thing, because I'm thinking to avoid that, it probably shouldn't be, so that players won't end up thinking the same thing here too. The fifth one is world and territory systems, starting with castle wars and region ownership, which we did know about already. The toggle for castle wars is already in the game as well, and there's already a tax system, so it seems like the systems are set up to incorporate that in the future. The second part talks about land excavation and underground content. Now I knew about underwater content, and in the Discord they expanded on how the sea content would be expanded further in the future. That's going to be super interesting, and I'm actually wondering how far they're going to be able to go with this, because if you're talking about terraforming, that's when you can get some crazy stuff going. And I'm also wondering how the servers are going to react to that, because like Life is Feudal, for example, that game has struggled a lot in the past by letting players do underground content and terraforming. The third section is siege weapons and golem production for combat, which is going to be interesting. So I wonder if the giant mech that we actually saw in one of the earliest teasers is actually the golem that they're talking about. And there is a section in the construction worker menu that actually says attack instead of defense, so that's probably where those will go. And then it talks about the Ordinus tower system. This is actually talked about on the wiki, and it sounds just like the tower system from Lost Ark, and it should be daily content that you can access. The sixth one is for events and competitions. The first section is card deck systems, thank you, and tournaments, which by the way, I will be participating in those and beating every single one of you or dying trying. The second part of that says reward-based card game system. And also, something I'd like to suggest ahead of time, although I probably shouldn't because it might ruin my chances of success, is I'm thinking that it's possible that the power cards that we actually get out in the open world may tie into this card game system. So I've been saving the legendaries and putting them in my bank when I can, and I'm probably going to save the purples too. There's also 4 different, and I haven't seen these ones, PvP experiences in there. One of them is called, and I'm sorry the text is kind of blurry, is I think it says Aetherian Clash, another one saying Elderheim Reckoning, another one saying Zenith Conquest, and then Arena Clan Battles. Now the first 3 may be different variations of the arena battles that we already have, maybe on a different map, or they could be talking about the Battle of Valhalla and the Olympiad War events that we already have inside of the game, as far as the tabs already showing up goes. It was mentioned in the CBT2 roadmap though, that there will be rank PvP in the game, so one of these, or maybe the Arena Clan Battles, should be one of those. But that's everything we have for the roadmap so far. They're of course planning to introduce other things on top of this. I've heard about the city of Atlantis. It's not in yet from what I've been confirmed, but in the future it will be underwater. They're also planning to introduce quality of life stuff, but please let me know what you thought about this roadmap in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good one.